I enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun. I think it was really perspective, giving me insight into myself. Things I already knew about myself, but like put a label on it and kind of showed me how to move forward from there to improve myself and like how to kind of evaluate other people and interact with them better.
I got an email through my inbox and I clicked on attend. I actually randomly found a link on Facebook, so I had no idea about the event or how it would be, but I've totally enjoyed it.
I've heard about this speaker before, very dynamic, very inspirational, so I thought I'd come and check it out. So
it is quite interactive, which I quite liked, and I think I would certainly be coming here for the future events.
Oh, it's been actually fantastic. Edward's been a fantastic speaker, sharing his insights into personality and how we can work better with all the different personality types and also understand ourselves better.
And I felt that today was very accessible. Sometimes when motivational speakers speak about these topics, they sometimes go over your head, you know what I mean? But I think he was very accessible. The concepts were very tangible. And what he was talking about was very inspirational. I really mean that.
It's actually been very empowering in understanding all the different personality types, how you can identify the different personalities of everyone around you, and also it's knowledge is power, and that's key. And it's using, you know, ancient text, wisdom, and applying it to modern life.
Obviously, the speaker is very learned and very knowledgeable in his field. I think that really came across, so he got the crowd going. I was very impressed.
This course has made me identify people at work, so team working, my nurses and what have you not, and learn how to make use of them. So I find it really useful in that respect.
Growth starts at the end of your understanding, at the edge of your understanding, and that made so much sense because once you stop understanding something and you go into the area where you don't understand, that's where growth begins. So for me, that was quite powerful.
So even though we're talking about equality, we're still very much putting people in boxes or portraying a particular type of success. And I think the important point there was that if we're actually going to recognize the equality of everyone, we also have to recognize diversity.
Whatever your profession or wherever your, whatever your background, to understand what it means about your personality and what it means for you to understand someone else's personality and actually to kind of create a really good harmony about it. So I would say it was super practical.
Simple and sweet and practical.
Fabulous.
Insightful. These events are phenomenal.
Excellent.
Motivating.
Absolutely amazing.
Thought-provoking.
Motivating. I think that Edward is just inspirational, absolutely inspirational.
Today we have with us our guest speaker, Edward Anobah. Edward has a special interest in marrying Eastern wisdom with modern knowledge, and that combination actually helps a lot of people achieve their personal best. He has been consistently speaking at EY for the Corporate Dharma series, and before that for the series of 12, if you guys have been with us for that long. Edward also speaks at a whole host of other organizations, including Shell, PwC, UBS, JP Morgan, to name a few. Edward has another role where he is a mentor to a lot of professionals globally in areas like goal management, leadership, communication, and connections. But today, Edward is going to talk about a very special subject, which is the Dharma of Personality. So what is personality? I think is going to be one of the key takeaways from this session. But at the same time, this should also help us all understand what personality means and how that knowledge can help us translate into better communications between professionals, personal networks, and people we work with day in, day out. So without delaying this anymore, I'll hand the stage over to Edward. Hi, Edward.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's good to see all of you. How are we doing?
Very well.
Okay. How's the year been?
Very good.
It's an interesting question, interesting response. So I'm very glad to be with all of you again. And also very glad to be able to share something that I think will be of some tangible benefit to you, something that I found to be personally extremely useful, as something that gives a bit of a paradigm shift to the way that we see the world, and therefore the way that we respond to each other and to the different experiences that we have in our daily lives. So today's presentation is called the Dharma of Personality. So we'll be discussing something about the nature of personality. We'll be looking at a certain principle around personality. We'll be giving you 3 key rules or laws that can really help you to bring out the quality of your relationships and also your inherent capability as an individual. Okay? To be honest, I'm very excited to share this topic with you because for me, this topic has been what we call PPS. In marketing, there's some studies which have found that when they write to you in marketing, whenever they post a letter to you, the part of the letter that actually gets the most attention is right at the end where it says PS. Okay? Whatever you actually read in the letter or don't read, people's attention will always fall on that last part of the letter. But today what we're doing is PPS. PPS stands for Personal Paradigm Shift. Okay? Personal Paradigm Shift. And we hope that the things that we share with you today can enrich your life in a very, very deep and powerful way. There's a wonderful story I was reflecting on recently. And it was a story of a spiritual teacher or guru who had 2 students. And he'd given the students a particular challenge. So he gave them some money, just a few rupees, and he told them, I want you to go and spend this money and come back and fill a room. Okay, so there were 2 rooms, each of equal size, 1 for each student. So the guru said, take this money, use it wisely, purchase something with it, and then come back and fill your room. Okay, as much as possible. So the first student took the coins. He was bewildered. He was considering that, what am I going to do with so little money in order to fill such a room? He went to the marketplace, he bought as many rags as he could and filled the room that way. The second student was extremely intelligent. So the second student also pondered very deeply this challenge that he'd been given by his guru. I have just a few pence and I need to fill this room. The second student also went to the marketplace. He spent the money, filled the room. So that later on the guru came and he visited the first student. And he went into the room and he saw that the room was mostly empty except for some very cheap rags that the student had bought from the marketplace in his attempt to fill the room. The guru wasn't very impressed. As he was on his way to see the second student, he met him en route to the room. And his second student said to him, Master, I just wanted to give you something before you go into the room. So the guru said, what is it you want to give me? I wanted to give you some change. Okay? Here's some change. You gave me some money to fill the room. I have a little bit left over that I wanted to give back to you. When the guru came to the room, he saw that this second disciple, this second student, had not only filled the room once, he had filled the room twice and had change to spare. When the guru came to that second room, he saw that that student had lit a candle in that room, so the room was illuminated with light. And he'd lit 1 incense stick in that room, so the room was very fragrant throughout, and he still had change. The Corporate Dharma series stands for this second student. Because the Corporate Dharma series, our underlying theme is that rather than filling our lives with so much speculative ideas, opinions, that we strive to fill our lives with very, very deep, powerful, and satisfying practical wisdom that can really illuminate our potential, who we are, and the quality of our relationships and the quality of our fulfillment. Does that make sense? So in that vein, I now have a request for every single one of you in this room. In the ancient Eastern traditions, it's explained that actually there's a very subtle relationship that takes place between the speaker and the audience. The speaker is able to share something based upon the enthusiasm and the participation of the audience. You know what's coming. So in order for me to give you a good presentation, I need your wholehearted participation this evening. Okay? That means there should be no snoring at the back. Okay? We want you to be open. We want you to share your thoughts, your ideas, your inspirations, so we can be enriched by each other. And I mean this sincerely. Yeah? So many subtle dynamics take place between the speaker and the hearer. And if we are open today, and if we're ready to share, I can honestly say to you that this subject matter can really open doors to our understanding of each other and ourselves in a very, very profound way. So let me begin by asking you a question. What are the characteristics or the behaviors of someone who is able to really learn and grow from workshops, seminars, wisdom, personal development? What kind of attributes or mindset allows one to really take full advantage of such sharing? Would anyone like to give me any thoughts on that? How do we need to be if we want to realize our potential in terms of our potential to grow and learn in such association? Can anyone give an answer? Yes. Okay. So one is to come with an open mind. This is very, very powerful. I once gave a presentation at JP Morgan, and I began the presentation with a glass. And then I had a jug in the other hand, and I was pouring some water into the glass. And I just kept pouring, so it started to just run over. And they were looking at me thinking, is this guy crazy? And I explained that this glass is like our mind. Our minds are so much filled with so many things on a day-to-day basis that in order for us to really grow and learn as individuals, we have to actually create that space within our minds to receive new understandings, and as we said, this PPS, to bring ourselves to a personal paradigm shift. So thank you for that. Definitely a mindset of openness and readiness to consider things that we may not have considered before. If I don't bring to you new understandings or ideas that you may not have considered, I'm not actually doing my job. It's very interesting. One speaker was saying the growth happens at the edge of our present understanding. Does that make sense? So we have a paradigm. We have a certain way of viewing or perceiving the world, and growth happens at the edge of our understanding. So can I ask you or invite you to allow me to share with you things that you may not have considered so deeply, and to push you, in a very nice way, obviously, slightly over the edge. Is that okay? Okay. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. What else is required for us to grow and to really learn and develop at this time? Any other sharings from the audience? Humility. Humility. It's a very powerful point. There was one study I was looking at, and it was talking about how when you have people who think they know something, their knowledge shuts down in that particular area. So when we are humble, the symptom of humility is that someone is constantly growing and developing as an individual. And where there's pride, one actually starts to close down because they think they know everything already. So we explain there are 4 stages of development in knowledge. First stage is unconscious incompetence. The individual doesn't know that they don't know. As one gains more knowledge, actually the confidence goes down because then they start to become aware of how little they really understand in a particular area. That second stage is called conscious incompetence. Therefore, one doesn't feel so bold because they're aware that they're not so expert in a particular field. As one gains more knowledge and experience of applying that knowledge, one comes to the platform of conscious competence. And eventually, through learning and applying and being very perceptive and aware of what happens when we apply something, we come to the platform of unconscious competence, where the learning has become a part of us. And our skillfulness in that particular area is practically second nature. So thank you for sharing that. Humility is definitely a key factor. Could anyone else, or would anyone else like to share something else that can help us to grow and develop this particular evening? Yes?
Contemplation and introspection.
Okay, very good point. Contemplation and introspection are also very, very powerful. In Sanskrit, which is an ancient Eastern language, this is called manana. Scientists have found that the neural pathways in the brain, they are reinforced not just by experience, but they're also reinforced in a similar depth by contemplation. So when we reenact a certain situation in the mind, it actually causes us to relive or to deepen our understanding or experience of that particular situation. So yes, contemplation and introspection are very, very key. Any other last points? Yes. Eagerness, yes. So if there's enthusiasm to learn and grow, then undoubtedly we will really grow as individuals. We encourage you to have a mood of dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction with the status quo, dissatisfaction with our realization of our potential. Because in that way, we will constantly move into newer and greater levels of awareness and greater quality of fulfillment. Is that okay? Okay. That said, we're going to begin our presentation. So we made some promises to you in the advertising. That from this seminar, you'd understand how to get the best out of others, how to understand the psychology of other people. We said that also there'll be increased awareness about why relationships sometimes don't work as well as they could, and also friendships, and how we can avoid this. So this is actually very, very powerful and practical knowledge. We will give a principle, because this principle is there in what's called the Vedas. The Vedas are an ancient Eastern body of literature which explain the human condition from so many different perspectives, including a metaphysical, psychological, and ultimately what we may call a spiritual or internal perspective as well. So I found that by dipping into this tradition of wisdom, so much has been gained. So we will talk about one principle from that, and we will also talk about a modern day application, whereby we will look at the same principle, but as it's been expressed in a kind of modern framework, which we'll call the DISC system. So we'll come back to that. So why are we doing this? I gave this presentation at PwC and at Shell, and they were explaining to me that in all corporate organizations, one of their biggest issues is turnover, and how there can be so many conflicts that go on. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah? In the workplace, within teams, projects, departments, institutions, organizations, for want of a deeper understanding of the differences in terms of personality. So just some quotes here. More than 370 million working days were lost in 2007 alone as a result of personality clashes. Right? Heavy workloads and stress at work causing the average UK employee to spend more than 2 hours a week dealing with conflict. Okay? So that was some research. One other point here, that a further study, or linked study, surveyed thousands of staff in 9 countries across 3 continents. In businesses of all sizes, half felt that personality clashes and warring egos were the #1 cause of workplace conflict. Factors requiring management in tough economic times. Have you ever experienced some type of workplace conflict? Yes or no? Okay. Many don't survive. There are many who, due to not being able to get along with others in their workplace, end up leaving their work It can also have hidden costs in terms of stress-related illnesses. So it's a very, very powerful thing to understand and learn how to master. So statistics, 54% of employees want managers to address underlying tensions before they erupt into conflict. 58% of employees who have relevant training now look for win-win outcomes. In countries where training is more prevalent, positive outcomes are far more common. 27% of employees have seen disagreement involving personal attacks or insults, and 16% have actually seen conflicts leading to people being fired. Very significant. So what is personality? Actually, let me go back. You can turn to the person sitting next to you. I'd like you to introduce yourself to them. There's no need to take their credit card details just yet. But having introduced yourself to them, I'd like you to share with them the answer to 2 questions, because we'll also bring in a bit of a networking and bonding feel to the presentation. One is, what made you decide to come this evening? And please don't say that Vigil forced you, okay? Vigil's our organizer. And the second question is, what is your understanding about personality? Because we hope that through this presentation today, we'll give you some new and very fresh insights into personality that you probably have not ever heard of before. Give you 2 minutes, please go. It's always good. It's always good to see everyone bonding and interacting so nicely. It's interesting, just from the perspective of standing here looking at you. Whenever we do an exercise and people are allowed to speak, suddenly all this energy comes up. People are just in the back kind of like this, trembling because they're scared they're going to be pointed at. They're just like really, really open. So it's very, very nice to see that enthusiasm. We'd like to keep it going. And we'd like to hear from some of you in the audience how you define personality. What were you sharing in terms of your definition of personality so that we can become enriched with each other's realizations and understandings? So would anyone like to share? Personality. How would you, or how did you, in your discussion, define such a term? Yes?
It is the nature or the character of a person. Something which may change over time due to circumstances, due to the people he's surrounded with.
Okay, so the nature or character of an individual and something that may change over time as well. Okay, wonderful. Someone else, would you like to share your understanding of personality?
We kind of went further. We read characteristics, but then we also looked at habits.
Habits, okay.
Also looked at temperament, how you interact externally, how you perceive life, or your outlook on life, and the aura you give is, there's something which is invisible, but people feel it.
Fantastic.
The aura that kind of creates.
So of course, it's getting kind of mystical now. The aura you give, how you just light up the room without the light bulb. It's good. Thank you for that. It was very, very comprehensive. Someone else, I think there was someone else at the back who wanted to share something. Yes, yourself, sir.
The attitude of a person to real life situations.
Could you repeat that, please?
Attitude of a person to real life situations.
Okay.
How he or she reacts.
How an individual reacts to real life situations. Very wonderful point. Anyone else who would like to share? Okay, if you just pass the microphone to this gentleman, please.
For me, when I think of personality, I think of a sense of humor or lack of.
That's fantastic. What can you say to that, really? So, sense of humor or lack of sense of humor. Okay, that's good. Let's look at one definition that we have to share here. So personality, a dictionary definition, is a combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. Qualities that make someone interesting or popular. Synonyms: character, individuality, personage, person, figure. Let's go a bit further. So personality types is what we're going to be discussing. There is a very strong, unconscious acceptance within society around the world that we are endlessly mutable. Meaning that you just become whatever you need to be, or the potential is there to do that. But it's very interesting. According to various types of understanding, and also ancient wisdom, and what we would also consider to be common experience, we find that there are inherent patterns that we see within individuals. And if we can understand this, recognize this, and honor this, it can make an amazing difference to our lives and our interactions with each other. Actually, I just remember that we also gave this presentation at UBS, and it had a different title. It was called Establishing Effective Relationships. And we were explaining that for relationships to be effective, you need to know who you are, you need to know who the other person is, and how the two of you can actually interact and make it work. So it's a very, very deep science, and it's very significant. I'll be honest, I'm very honored to be able to share this with you, because in sharing, I'm also learning more about this. And I found, as I said before, it makes a huge difference in the way that we can perceive life. So personality types, the way in which we feel most comfortable dealing with our environment, the way we act under mild to moderate stress, the way we feel most energized, satisfied, and happy in what we do, and how we translate and filter everything and everyone else. Now, what it is not. It's not cast in stone. We can act differently in different ways, especially for short periods of time. It's not everything about an individual. We can be a mixture of different personality types. And it's not an excuse for bad behavior. And we'll go into that a bit more. What I want to do now, to bring out this understanding more, is I'd like to ask for a volunteer. And actually, I think Bijal found a volunteer already. Okay, if you come to the front, give him a round of applause. He's brave enough to volunteer. And he doesn't know what he's volunteered for either. But it's all good. What's your name, sir?
Avi.
Very nice to meet you, Avi, Edward. If you could just face forward. So, Avi, what we're going to do is just a little experiment. You'll be one of the participants, and we're going to call another member of the audience to participate. What I'm going to do, Avi, is I'm going to blindfold you, as you do, and I'm going to ask you just to retrieve a particular object in the room, okay? That's all. Don't look so stressed. So I'm going to put this on. Okay. So all we're going to do is actually get someone to direct you to pick up a particular object, okay? Okay. What I'm going to do is we need that volunteer who's going to direct Avi. Oh, she put her hand up already. It's good. Give her a round of applause. Please come forward. You come forward. Okay. So, first of all, what's your name, please?
Ashini.
Ashini. Okay, is this your first time here?
Yes.
That's why you volunteered. Okay, that's good. That's good. So, Ashini, we're going to, very simply, we're going to place something in the room.
Okay.
And all that we're going to ask you to do is to direct Avi in order to retrieve that particular thing. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, but before we begin, I'm going to ask Bijal if you can just take Ashini to just outside and close the door. Yeah, yes, and then we'll just start in a second, okay? Okay. So I'm going to give you, Avi, one additional piece of information, okay? So if you just don't look, as we agreed with the blindfold. So did you understand that or not? No?
Again.
Okay, let me say again. Okay, so you hear better this way? Okay, so what I'm saying is, I'm going to say it to you quietly.
All right.
Is that okay? You understand?
Again, say it again.
Okay, okay.
It's too complicated.
Oh, okay. It's 2 instructions. Okay, let's do it like this. Let me take this off first.
Right.
And what we'll do, I'll take you around and I'll explain that.
Okay.
But if you bring Ashini first, okay? And I'm going to take you around.
I think I've got a
okay,
grasp
that's cool,
of it.
that's cool.
All
But I'll just make sure it's 100% clear before we begin. Okay, if you come forward, and I'm going to ask you to wait here very quickly. Okay. If you come with me, Avi, I'll just explain, then we'll begin. Is that okay? I'll be very quick. Okay.
You can carry on.
Okay. Okay, so you can't see? Okay. So I'm going to put some object in a particular place, and all you need to do is direct him together. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's... Okay. And in terms of directions, there's only set options that you can use, okay?
Okay.
So you can turn to go left, you can turn to go right, you can turn to go forward, you can turn to go backwards, like that, yeah? Like, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just see how quickly we can...
To turn, right?
Yeah, you can turn to turn left or turn right,
Okay.
like that, yeah?
Okay.
So let's see how quickly you can get him to that
Tell me the
particular...
degrees as well.
Yeah.
You can to the object.
Might be 45 that way.
Okay.
I got you.
He's very enthusiastic. Okay, ready? Go.
Turn 90 degrees to your right. Turn clockwise. 90 degrees clockwise.
Wait, I forgot my instructions again.
Okay. Let's
Alright, okay.
Okay, you can, it's remembered. It's remembered.
Okay. Turn 180 degrees counterclockwise.
What's counterclockwise?
Just turn 180 degrees. Turn around. Not face. Okay. Walk forward until I tell you to stop.
I think I'm gonna fall down.
Okay, stop. You're about to fall. Walk backwards. Walk slower backwards. Okay, continue walking backwards. Continue. Stop. Turn around 90 degrees.
Which way?
Counterclockwise. Turn 180 degrees again. Good, walk forward until I tell you to stop. Walk backwards. Continue, stop walking backwards. Oh, you're actually listening. Okay, continue walking backwards. Continue, stop. Shift a little bit to your left, a little bit, so you don't run into the object in front of you. That way.
Just a tip, he's got a blindfold, he can't see us.
Shift, no, come back. Come back the way you were originally. Yes.
That's left.
Yes, left. Stop. Walk forward. Backwards. Walk backwards. Walk backwards. Continue. Stop. Actually, take one more step. Okay, now stretch your right hand out towards your side, exactly towards your right. So your arm is completely, yes, perfect. Now shift at the same time until I tell you to stop so your hand is right over the object. So go walk, shift right, shift left. One more. Okay, stop. Drop your hand a little. Drop it. Rise it. Okay. No, but like, so it's hovering over and on. Okay. Shift it a bit. Okay. It's forward, so on a chair, so you need to pick it up. So a little bit down. Okay, feel the chair. Move one chair over to your right. Yes, almost there. Yes, now. To the center of the chair. In the center of the chair, there's an object for you. Perfect.
Okay. She deserves a round of applause for her. Let me take this off. So, take this off here.
That was hard.
You're like trying to do the opposite thing as well.
Abby, I want to say thank you very much for being such an interesting contestant. Please take a seat. And also Ashwini, give them a round of applause, both of them, please. I'll try and explain what happens. So that was definitely interesting. There was it didn't quite go how we expected. But the idea with this exercise, what we did at Shell, was the person who was blindfolded was given a different code. He was told that whenever she tells you to go to your left, you'll take your right. Whenever she tells you to walk forward, you will walk backwards. So at a certain point, what we saw was the moment that Ashwini? Yes, Ashini. The moment Ashini understood what was going on, what did she do in terms of her instruction? She adapted according to who? To the other person. It seems like such a small thing, but it's actually paradigm shifting to understand, and we'll show you some stats around this also, that every single person has their own type of inherent understanding or way of seeing things. And when relationships are effective, they're effective because we learn to adjust our communication and our interaction with others according to their mentality or mindset. This is a basic understanding that has made practically millions of pounds and dollars. Very simple example. Who's heard of the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Anyone? Right? Because when this understanding is there that there are natural differences in the way things are understood and perceived, then we can understand that if we want to make things work, or if we want to communicate, we should try and understand where the other person is coming from and adjust accordingly. Does that make sense? Yeah? So what we saw here was a little example, in its own way, of how to adjust accordingly in order to make some particular communication work. So we're going to explain or expand on that a bit more as we go along. Okay. There are many models. Anyone heard of Myers-Briggs? Yeah? Okay. The Enneagram, anyone ever heard of that system? No, that's big in America. Ayurveda, anyone heard of Ayurveda? Okay, within Ayurveda, there's also a personality types model. Has anyone ever heard of Varnashram? Yeah, one or two. Because within that system also, there are different models of understanding. So this principle is called style flex. In the professional or in the area of self-improvement, it's called style flex. Style flex means that we understand our personality and we engage with others according to their unique personality. As opposed to thinking that the way I think, this is the way that the entire world thinks, and then becoming disappointed and frustrated because it's not true. Now, this is something very, very interesting that you may not have heard before. There's more to personality than meets the eye. Yeah? So you have the energy and the energetic. It's a very interesting kind of principle that's taken from the Vedic teachings. The idea is that you have a person, and the person also has their energy, right? They also have the things that they express, their particular desires, thought patterns, all of these kinds of things. That energy is powerful. And when power is directed in a healthy way, it is productive. But when that power or when our energies are directed in an unhealthy way, they can lead to very, very, very destructive situations. I was explaining to someone earlier today about it was a boxer. It was one boxer who for many years was successful and then he went into retirement. Now, to be a successful boxer, you must have a lot of aggression, aggressive energy that is being used in that particular sport. What they found was when that boxer went into retirement, because that energy hadn't been spent, and because he didn't channel that energy in a productive way, what do you think happened? Any guesses? Sorry? Not quite. Actually, he started to get into conflicts, fights, and even abusive relationships as well. Physically abusive relationships where he was abusing others. This understanding is actually one of the principles behind this ancient system that we call Varna, in the Eastern traditions, that different people have different energies, and the idea is to live a life where that energy is channeled in a healthy and positive and productive way. So it's useful for society rather than repressing it or misdirecting it in ways which are ultimately destructive. So there are natural patterns and tendencies in different individuals, and this system we're going to use is based upon this understanding, but it's a modern framework or modern way of presenting this idea that people are inherently different and have inherent strengths and weaknesses. So natural patterns and tendencies. If I asked you, if you had to choose, okay, and I'd like you to have a show of hands, if you had to choose, even though we are all a mixture of both, if you had to choose between being task-oriented or people-oriented, raise your hands if you would say that between the two, you are more task-oriented. Put your hands up, please. And don't be shy about it either. Okay. 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 Task-oriented means if you have a choice between, I'll give it an illustration. So it's an autumn morning in the UK, and you're in the front area of your house, and you're brushing the leaves in the front garden. Your friend comes to see you. What would you rather do? Would you rather engage your friend in finishing the task, or would you rather spend time and start talking to your friends? Would you be more into completing the task or more into spending time with the person, even though we were all a mixture of both? Let's do this again. Raise your hand if you would say that you'd be more into completing the task. Okay. And as I said, don't be shy. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just the tendency. Raise your hand if you say you'd be more into talking to your friends. Okay. We're a bit outnumbered today, right? Okay. Interesting. Second question. Again, we are all a mixture of both, and we can display different things in different circumstances. But generally, if you had to define yourself as being either reserved or outgoing, okay, raise your hand if you would say that you're more outgoing. Raise your hands. Okay. And raise your hands if you say you're more reserved. Okay, and some of the reserved people kept their hand down because they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. I understand. It's okay. It's okay. So we have our psychology, our patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. And this is actually very, very interesting because it allows us to try and put ourselves in other people's shoes. So there's a saying, you probably heard this before. Before you criticize anyone, walk a mile in their shoes. You've heard this before, right? Yeah. Okay. Why? Because that way when you criticize them, you're a mile away from them and you have their shoes as well. Okay? A little bit of joke there. You knew it was coming. We want to give you 3 keys from the Vedic understanding. 3 things that can make a real and significant difference to your life if you take these on board and act on that basis. Okay? 3 things. Number 1, we touched on this earlier. Adjust the personality to whoever we are dealing with. If we want our relationships to be effective, we should try to understand the other person and adjust to them accordingly. We're very much attuned to thinking that the way I am, that's it, and why can't people be like me? Have you ever heard someone say that? Why do they have to be like that? Right? It's because we don't really accept that people are inherently different. Right? Just like we have a certain type of personality, others also have their own distinctive patterns. And maturity in life starts when we accept people for who they actually are. It's a very simple but very powerful paradigm shift. Second point, relationships are built on values. Right? Relationships are built on values, common values. As Vikas was saying, I'm chair of governors for a school. And it's interesting. So there was a discussion about different individuals and who could be on board. And my vice chair was recommending certain people. And I explained to him, I said that the reason why our governing body doesn't have issues is because we follow a Vedic principle which was actually followed by ancient kings. This is explained in literatures like the Mahabharata and others. In the training of kings in the ancient East, they were trained that your team should be people who have the same values but different competencies. If when you're creating a team, you bring together people with the same values but different competencies, you practically rule out practically 99% of the conflicts that happen within any organization, family, project, or institution, because most people don't know this one simple principle. You see? And it goes, and because of speculation, people will say things like, well, you know, we need people who are different. But they don't know that, yes, you need people who are different in a certain way, but they have to also be similar in a certain significant way. So there has to be similarities in the right areas and differences in the right areas to create powerful synergy. If they're completely the same, it doesn't work. If they're completely different, it also does not work. Right? So it's a very powerful principle. Relationships are built on values. So in order to have lasting relationships with individuals, one must look for individuals who have similar or complementary values. Does that make sense? Yeah? We were explaining this to a group of CEOs last month in central London. Now the third thing, there is the person and their energy. Channel your energy wisely in order to succeed. Many times our youth would be very, very successful if the parents recognized the young person's inherent talents and interests and found a way to channel that in a healthy way. What we often see in society is repression. So someone is good at something, interested in something, inspired in something. No, don't do that because it doesn't make money. Right? Rather than finding some healthy expression of that. And unfortunately, therefore, in many cases, we have a future generation who are shut down. Seriously shut down. So we're hoping that by sharing this, we can actually open ourselves up and help others to open themselves up to their full potential. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to use this system which is called the DISC system. Okay? D-I-S-C. It's a very simple system, and the reason why we're sharing it is it's very easy to apply. Okay? So within the DISC system, there's 4 different personality types. You have the D-type individual who is outgoing, task-oriented. Okay? You have the I-type individual, outgoing, people-oriented. You have the S-type individual who is reserved, people-oriented. And then you have the reserved, task-oriented individual who is the C-type. So D stands for dominant, I stands for inspirational, S stands for supportive, C stands for cautious. And each type has its own particular strengths and weaknesses. None is better than the other. But if you understand this, then you can understand something about your inherent tendencies quickly. And you can read people in practically seconds. Does that make sense? Yeah? And the moment you understand those individuals, you will understand something very significant about what motivates them, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, right? What drives them, and the particular things that kind of cause them to feel stressed or cause there to be some kind of imbalance. You also know what their natural skills are. Okay? So for example, you have your outgoing, task-oriented people, the D-type. Your D-type is your kind of rugged individual. Okay? We had a project where one friend of mine was given the lead in that project, and she's a natural dominant person. So once she was given the control, she was like a bull in a china shop, just went forward, got it done, you know, broke a few people in the process, right? But it got done, okay? She was a very natural D-type. They're great at getting things done. They make your natural, excellent managers, right? Very task-oriented, very result-oriented. I had another friend. I mean, the guy is so popular, and people just wondering, he's hardly been on the scene for 2 minutes, and he's friends with everyone, right? He's your natural out-type, outgoing, people-oriented. They make great marketers. They're great at networking. They don't have to read about networking. It's what they do for it. Like, it's like breathing. You understand? Yeah? They meet people, and before, you know, after 2 seconds of meeting them, they've got their credit card details, phone numbers, everything. Naturally. You have your S-type, reserved, people-oriented. They're the kind of people in your organization who will say things like, why can't we all just love each other? Group hug. So your S-types, they naturally want everyone to get along. And they're very good, they're very natural counselors because they're very empathetic. They feel for others. So, you know, like, you'll be watching a movie with your friends, right? The one who's crying and needs extra hankies, that's your S-type, okay? And I think some of you are starting to recognize yourself in the model. That's good. And then you have your C-type. Your reserved, task-oriented individual. Now, this is interesting. Again, in one project I'm involved in, we have a C-type person. So whenever the minutes come out at the end of the meeting to be checked, this individual, he will go through every single page of the minutes. He'll correct all the grammar, correct all the spelling mistakes. If the date's got a dot in the wrong place, he will send an email to everyone explaining that the dot was in the wrong place. And he drives everyone crazy. But I was explaining to him, he's just a C-type. It's just the way he is. He's naturally into the detail. So the motto for the D-type is ready, fire, aim. Okay? Ready, fire, aim. They're so much into getting things done, they're really into the result that it goes before anything else. The motto for the I-type is ready, aim, talk. Okay, you start to know, you'll start to think of people who fit the bill. The motto for the C-type is ready, aim, 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 aim. Because there's so much into quality and detail, they may never get to the end, but it has to be perfect. They're your natural perfectionists. Yeah. You see, when we did this talk at different places, everyone starts to, you see people's face change, like, oh, that's me. Oh, okay. Hope no one noticed. And then you've got the S-type, and their motto is ready, 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 ready. So it just carries on like that. Let's look at some more information about them. The D-types want to do things my way, okay? They're dominant, they are in charge. And if you want to get into a fight, tell them that they can't do it, okay? Challenge them, then you'll see. The I-type, they want to do things the fun way, right? They're looking for fun, enjoyment. The C-type, they want to do things the right way. In a moment, we'll go through some famous personalities and their personality types, okay? Because the C-types are so much into value. They want excellence. And then your S-types, they want to do things the easy way. For example, you'll be in a room, and the room has a certain temperature. If you're sitting next to an S-type, you'll tell the S-type, you know, isn't it really hot in here? And they'll be like, yes, I'm sweating. It's good. And then the other person on the other side of the S-type says, isn't it cold? And say, oh, I'm freezing. It's terrible. It's like, I don't know how I'm surviving. Because whatever's going on, they're very much amenable to that. The D-type, the difficulty is appreciating others. They're so much into results that they may trample on people's feelings or not take into consideration other people while they're trying to get into a result or achieve a result. The I-type's weakness is organization. They are very much into being spontaneous and having fun, so they don't like regulation and organization. Right? The weakness of the C-type is that in their desire for excellence and value, they can tend to be very critical. And the weakness of the S-type is that they are very much into the status quo. They just want everything to stay as it is. They don't want any trouble. So sometimes the integrity may be lost because they're not prepared to stand up for a principle. The D-types are driven by their will. Very important thing to understand. The I-types are driven by their inspiration. So when you want an I-type to do something, you tell them, you know what? We can do this. And they're like, it's okay, baby. I'm here. They'll move. It works, trust me. But the C-type, they're driven by their intellect. The C-types are very good at organizing structures. So you tell a C-type, I like you to create a system or a process or a procedure, right? And they'll be very good at that. You ask them for their best thinking in a particular area, and they'll love that. They're very good at that. The S-types are driven by their feelings, right? So if you want to motivate an S-type, you tell them, I can't do this without you. And it's like, it's okay, we're in this together. So in that way, each of these types have their own natural strengths and weaknesses. If for civilization to really prosper, one of the most basic but powerful things we have to understand is that there are inherent differences. You know, we are not all the same, and we don't need to be all the same. We can act according to our nature in a healthy and balanced way, and we can be peaceful and happy and progressive in doing that. One other point about this, there's a real danger when we don't understand this principle. And that danger is that we can destroy or erode our own or other people's self-esteem. Think about it. Someone is a natural S-type. They like people to get along, they like to be peaceful, and you've told them that they are only successful if they go out there and become rugged and don't care about anyone and become a big achiever. So now they're like the ugly duckling who's trying, well, they're like the so-called ugly duck who's trying to fit in with the other ducks because they don't understand that there's nothing wrong with their nature. Do you see the point? So it's about recognizing what people are and allowing them to be the best version of themselves. How many times in our lives have we heard people say, why can't they be more like this? Isn't it? Because this understanding isn't there. Now let's put this understanding to some practical use. I'd like you to think of 3 significant people in your life and try and work out, based upon this model, what their nature is, okay? Now, bear in mind that we can be a mixture of different natures, but there tends to be 1 or at the most 2 which are predominant, okay? So write down the names of 3 significant people in your life and try and work out, are they more task or people-oriented? And are they more outgoing or reserved? And based upon that, work out what their particular personality type is. We'll give you 1 minute starting from now. Introspective exercise. We can all act in different ways at different times, but for short periods. But over long periods of time, people will tend to act in a particular way. That's why it becomes a bit confusing sometimes, because you say, well, I've got a friend who's like this, but last week she did that and she acted very differently. Yes, it can happen, but for short periods. But over time, consistently, people have a certain personality and a certain nature. So try and understand that. We're going to move on, because we still have a lot to cover. So it's just some interesting information. They did some study of 800 CEOs of large companies, and they found that 67% had a higher degree of flexibility. They would adjust their style of speaking and interacting according to the nature of others. Some more information on that? So, they found 4 distinct personality types, which is what we're speaking about today. Top performing executives demonstrated a fluid ability to flex their style as the situation demands. So empirically, it's also proven that this principle actually does work. Let's move on. Okay, why is this information useful? Because you can understand your specific strengths and blind spots. It's very powerful, even for parenting. If you quickly can understand the nature of your children, then wherever they're weak, you can build that into their training as they grow up, so they can become a very whole individual. Does that make sense? So you have a child who's a D type, they're very dominant. What do they need to work on? Okay, you train them. Make sure that you learn to appreciate others. You have a child who's a very natural I type. They're very outgoing. You teach them to be organized and responsible. You have a child who's a C type. They're very much into the detail. You tell them, relax, you know. Chill out, you know, it's okay, you know. You have someone who's an S type. You help them to feel comfortable in expressing themselves. Okay, I know you want everyone to have a group hug. That's good. But what do you think? What are your thoughts? Like that. It's very, very powerful. A few of you were here when we did the presentation called the Dharma of Empowerment, and we spoke about this principle, the principle of completing the circuit. Because you're only as strong as your weakest link. Yeah? So if you understand this, you understand how to make yourself whole as a person in this sense. And then as you become more whole psychologically, you then qualify to think about and achieve higher levels of fulfillment. In Maslow, when he speaks about his hierarchy of needs, the highest is self-actualization or self-realization. And as we're able to deal with these lower levels in a healthy way, then these higher levels of fulfillment become a practical reality in a very sustained and consistent sense. Does that make sense? Okay. Actually, let me just add one thing from here. So you become aware of differences, you improve your ability to build more effective partnerships, and you can understand how to change according to the person. This is also extremely effective in choosing teams. You see? Because when you're trying to build a team, you'll know who's good at getting things done. Okay, your D type. They're the ones that you give the project to just get it done. Who's going to keep the team together and make sure everyone gets along? What type? Your S type. Who's going to be able to check everything to make sure that things are done in great detail? That is your C type. And who's the person to go out and present and market and push your brand? That is the I type. You understand? Very practical. Let's move on. So this is a key point. Many people in the world are stressed because of this hidden cause. The hidden cause of stress is actually desiring something that's too far a stretch outside of your own particular skill set or nature. Right? Very, very powerful thing. So someone is very sensitive and they've put themselves into a situation where they're constantly under stress. Their stress threshold is not the same as someone else's, isn't it? If you look carefully, you've seen this. Some people, you think they've got so much on and they are able to handle all this stress, and someone else has a fraction and they're already just about ready to give up, isn't it? We almost showed you a different model. We were almost going to use two models, but I thought there wouldn't be time. But when we do our master classes, which are coming next year, we'll also show you the Ayurvedic model, which is called the dosha model. And it explains that each particular body type also has different levels of stress management, different levels of stamina, different types of exercise which are good for that body type, different types of food, different types of lifestyle at different pace. Right? It's so detailed. It's amazing that practically no one knows about it. And so you can understand, for example, now there's a whole fad, everyone wants to go to the gym. But actually, did you know that there's a certain body type that if they go to the gym and do all this kind of aerobic exercise, it's actually not good for the body? Funnily enough, isn't it? In a similar way, I was just reflecting how there's so many people, they look old. You know, sometimes people look old before their time. And it's often because they're just eating the wrong foods. Because they're eating the wrong foods, their skin doesn't have the elasticity that it should have because they're not taking enough moisture in the right types of food. So they're growing old, looking wrinkled, but they don't need to. But no one's taught them that actually your particular body type requires this type of lifestyle, this type of food. It's extremely detailed. But we'll go into that another time. So, hidden cause of stress, desiring outside of your nature. Okay, so reactions to tension for the different types. So with an I type, when they are under stress, they tend to be emotionally attacked. They tend to talk even more than they talk normally, right? They may cry, they may try and just react by rejecting something and ending something, and they may overreact emotionally. Your S types, when they are under stress, they wait too long. They'll tell others, they may avoid trouble because they do not like conflicts. They may give in, they may worry, and there can even be emotional breakdown. With your D types, under stress, they explode. They tend to blame others, dictate, take over, and they may hold in emotions. Interesting, again, when I'm looking at the others, I can see everyone's recognizing, oh, yeah, that's you, honey. And the C types, under stress, they may nitpick, they may leave. C types hate to be told that they're wrong, right? Because they're perfectionists, right? They hate to be told that they're wrong. They may pull away and again withdraw. Because rather than being told that actually you've done something wrong, or your detail was wrong, or your answer was wrong, it's like, no, I'm never wrong. I'm Mr. C, okay? Let's move on. What they need to learn. The I types need to learn self-restraint. They want to be spontaneous, they want to be free, But actually in life there needs to be a balance. You also have to be responsible, you also have to be regulated. The S-types need to learn stretch. They want to stay within their comfort zone. You know? Let's keep things the way they are. Let's keep things the way that they've always been. They need to learn to stretch. D-types need to learn to listen, because they tend to try and dominate everything. You know? Everything, everyone, whatever it is, they want to take charge. It's like, just calm down. It's okay, we can do this together. And the C-types, because they are always analyzing, they need to come to some conclusion, right? You know, they can be analyzing something for decades, and everyone else, we just need an answer. Like, you know, do you want the chips or do you want like the sandwich? I mean, you know, it's just that simple. It's like, well, how many calories in the chips? As opposed to the salad, you know, like that, or the sandwich, you know? What kind of sandwich is it? Did we use fresh ingredients for the sandwich? Is it nutritious? What nutrients? What vitamins are in the sandwich? It's like, look, I ain't got time for this. I just need to choose some. Okay? You can also tell the personality types by their emails. So the D types, yes, no salutations. You recognize this. You know you've received emails from a D type before, right? No scroll bars, no attachments, less than 3 paragraphs, you know, more than 3 sentences per paragraph. First sentence matters, like, what do you want? Basically in the email. Bottom line up front, few questions and questions up front. So that's how they write in an email. I types, salutation with a name, yep, ask me how I am, I'm feeling great, honey, how are you? Like that. Tell me how you are. Long is fine, though I may not read it all. Jokes are very, very good. No attachments, you might want to follow up because they tend to be disorganized. So if you send them an email, you may have to send them another email to remind them that you sent them an email. Okay, like that. And signature block with all your contact info because they love to stay in touch. Okay? S-types, please start with my name. Thank you. Okay? Please do share with me how you're doing. It means a lot to me when you ask me how I am. It's very much into the emotions. Please tell me the whole story. I really appreciate it. Reading those long attachments takes time, but for you, I'll do it. I work harder when you show you care about me, and please finish with your name and contact information. C-types, why do you include your name? That's completely unnecessary, I bet. Scroll bars means you respect foreigners. Longer is better, please share the entire history. Don't leave out any details, okay? Attachments means you know the value of details and accuracy. I take longer to respond but provide better answers. I prefer email. If you have a choice between seeing me directly and emailing me, please keep your distance, okay? It's not necessary. We don't need to actually see each other. You can just send me an email. Emoticons are childish. Bullets show organization and preparation. Jokes are a complete waste of network resources. And a full but simple signature block is more effective. I think you get the picture. So, famous personalities. D-type, Donald Trump, Tiger Woods. I-types, Bill Clinton, Robbie Williams, Oprah Winfrey. S-types, Gandhi, Mother Teresa. C-types, Bill Gates, Einstein, also Steve Jobs. Very strong C-type, very much into quality and excellence. I think one of the models of the iPhone, he actually put it off being released because it wasn't exactly as he wanted it to be. Yeah? You understand? So, Will Smith, what type? Aye. Margaret Thatcher? You sure? I think so, yes. Colombo? C-type, yeah. Some of you may not be so familiar. Martin Luther King? S-type. Okay, so we mentioned this principle before. Understand your personality, engaging with others according to your personality. And that is the end of the presentation. And we will now open up for questions because whatever type I am, I promise that I would not go over time, and I always go over time, as you can guess what that means. But let's see what questions and comments you have now. Can we bring the microphone to the front for this gentleman, please? Let me go back.
Obviously, we've mentioned about all these different types of personalities, should I say. But obviously, people have to talking about flexibility and how that relates to their own personality. But an individual if he takes a dominant role sometimes, if he goes into a supportive role sometimes, or inspiring role. Now, where does that personality sit in his sort of, in the whole disc that we're talking about?
So what we mentioned is that naturally, over time, they'll have a certain tendency. But it's good that when the circumstance and the relationship requires it, that they're able to adjust. I found that it's easier to adjust if I'm being myself most of the time. Do you see the point? So if you're actually comfortable with who you are, it's a very key thing, it's a subtle thing about relationships. People are comfortable with people who are comfortable with themselves. You understand? People are very willing to accept people who accept themselves. It's very simple. So you'll see that there is a tendency that you have naturally. Someone once said that our character is how we act when no one is looking. Interesting statement, right? So when no one's looking, how you are, like if no one's looking and then suddenly you like to, sing and dance, wildly, then, you're an I type, right? Your character is how you are when no one is looking. But we can adjust according to our situation also. Yeah, like that. Is that okay to answer your question? I have a question, please.
Hi. You touched on value a little bit, and you said that high-performing teams are made up particularly of people who have the same values as you, which I agree with. And I just want to, I suppose, give an example from my firm. I work here. Often I've experienced that people's values come from similar cultures because some similar background. For example, the team I'm working at now, my manager, he's from a South Asian background, and he all picked all of his juniors from very similar backgrounds to him. And if I look at the partnership of this firm, most of them are white males. So I suppose my question is, if everything on a high-performing team is on values and inherently your culture, will that not limit people's
very good question
going up firms and etc.?
So the values are not necessarily, see, even within a particular race, different people have different values. When we gave the presentation at Shell, one of the reasons why we gave it, one of the briefs that they gave us, is that they were concerned that people from different cultures are able to get along within the company. So when we gave the presentation, we emphasized that different cultures also have a different personality type that they promote as the ideal. So let's get into that since you've mentioned this point. So what kind of country do you think promotes the kind of outgoing, task-oriented individual as the ideal? America, yeah. Like that, you're a rugged individual, just went out there, conquered everything by himself, you're kind of slightly Rambo-ish style persons, okay? So that's America. What culture do you think promotes your I type, your outgoing, people-oriented as the ideal? Any ideas? Italy, yes, Italians, like that. Kiss you on both cheeks, mamma mia, that kind of thing, right? So outgoing, people-oriented, and also your Latino cultures, like that, yeah? What culture do you think promotes the reserved, task-oriented personality type? Germany, yep. England as well, stiff upper lip, like that. And what culture do you think promotes the reserved and people-oriented personality type as the ideal? Sorry? India, yes. I was speaking to a friend who was in charge of a particular project, and many people in the project were really unhappy with him, like that. But no one to say anything. And he was getting frustrated. He said, but if they're unhappy, why didn't they just talk to me? I said, because in their culture, they're not going to go up to you and say, we're unhappy, right? Because he didn't actually understand that culturally there is also differences. So the thing is, this is called, the idea is to appreciate the unity with diversity. The false thing is to pretend that it's all one. This is called impersonalism. But where there's a genuine appreciation of unity with diversity, then you can move somewhere because what you're seeing and understanding is based upon reality. Does that make some sense? So just because they are the manager or the leaders from a particular background, let's say that they're English, it doesn't mean they won't find people of other cultures who have similar values. So it doesn't have to go in that particular direction. So that's what we're saying, like Italians, so they're also, white males, white females, but they could also have a different value system to someone who's, for example, British or German. So it can still work, even within any particular culture, there's a mix. Yeah? But there's a certain model that's promoted as the ideal. Is that okay? Okay. Other questions or comments, please? Yes. Maybe last question and comment.
Hi. My question is, for example, I'm like a, from what you explained, like a D type, and my manager, who I don't get on with, is a C type.
I'm not surprised you don't get on. Okay.
And I feel like I've kind of adapted to her way of doing things, but it's kind of like, because it's not something that comes natural to me, so it's kind of like wearing off. So what do you do in a situation where you've adapted to the other person's personality, but you can't maintain it?
Okay, very good question. So in a situation where you've adapted to the other person's personality, but you can't maintain it, well, two things: don't hang out with them so much, okay? In the sense that the more you spend time with them, the more you have to stretch, yeah? The idea is that where you need to, you adjust in the interaction. But when you're not interacting, then you can actually act according to your own particular nature. Do you see the point? That's actually how it works. It's not that you have to constantly stretch or style flex. But if you have enough time by yourself or with others who do understand and relate to you, then that allows you to have the flexibility whereby when you are around people where you have to adjust to a bit more, you can do so more easily. Does that make some sense? Yeah, like that. I think we're going to stop now because I always do go over time and my manager's looking at me. There you go. Just to make sure that I don't go over time. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you. We really do encourage you to take these points to heart. Let me go back to the 3 keys that we gave you at the beginning of the session. So number 1, adjust to the personality of whoever you're connecting with. Very simple but extremely effective. Yeah? And within that, it means try to understand who you're dealing with. Don't assume that they're like you. Don't assume. Try and understand them, their nature, their tendencies for who they are, and it'll make your life far more easy because you won't have the frustration of thinking that they're one thing when they are, in fact, something else. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay. Number 2, relationships are built on values, especially for intimate relationships. Find those who have similar values to you. Yep. And that's very, very important so you can have a long-term, healthy, and deep connection with those people. And also, when you want to relate to others, that's fine. So then relate to them according to their values. Speak to them according to what their needs, interests, and concerns are. And you will always make a connection with such people. And the last point, there is a person and there is their energy. So channel our energies. So in many cases, when we say someone is negative or bad, it just means that they haven't channeled their energies in a healthy direction. Does that make sense? So try to understand what your needs are. I'll give an example. I know one person, they tend to get restless, right? They're the kind of person they just can't sit still. So they start exercising and they channel their energy into physical exercise so that they can be peaceful and act in a positive way. Does that make sense? So you need to understand the nature and how to channel those energies. We call this the Shakti and the Shaktiman, the energy and the energetic. Everyone is a person, but they also have their personal energies, their personal thought patterns, their personal desires, and it's about channeling those in a healthy way. And that was the basis of what we call the Varnashram system. How each personality type could channel its energies in a way which was productive for the individual and for society as a whole. So we have a series of masterclasses which will come up next year, where we'd like to invite you to come. We can go into more detail about how these things can be applied, and we'll also talk about the Ayurvedic personality types model, what foods are good for your particular body, what the lifestyle that's good for your body, your particular exercise that works for your particular body, and how you can optimize both body, mind, intelligence, ego, and also will bring out a principle of what's called Bhakti Yoga, which is also an understanding of what we call the Atma or the self. So there's also a deeper dimension to all of this teaching, which also helps us to give a deep honoring of and nourishment to that inner self as well. And all of these things together make a huge and powerful difference. So I want to thank you for actually giving me a gift. I asked at the beginning that I said at the beginning there's a natural dynamic between the speaker and the audience, and I feel that because of your sincerity and enthusiasm, this evening we've been able to share something that's of value and practical use and effectiveness for all of us. So I personally want to thank you. It's wonderful to see so many of you again, so many familiar faces and so many new faces as well. We hope we've been able to enrich your life in some small way. We wish you a wonderful, as we're coming to the end of the year, a wonderful 2014, and we hope to see you fresh, energized, inspired, wiser, and more able to relish the deeper fulfillment of life in 2015. Thank you so much for your time, and good evening.